Hi, welcome to the channel. In today's video, Georgia is here from Nebraska. She came down to have some work done, to do some window installs. She's going to give us a tour of her van before she heads out.
Hi everybody, I'm Georgia. This is my 2019 Ram Promaster 2500. I named him Vanasaur. Let's go on in and take a look. Welcome to the Vanasaur. Before we do a little tour of what I built, a little bit about how I got into the idea of van life. In 2017, I flew to Iceland with my best friend, and we rented a camper van and drove the entire road all the way around Iceland, camping in the snow and rain and freezing cold temperatures. I fell in love with the idea of van life. I decided that I was gonna build my own van. Once I got started in June of 2022, I bought this 2019 Ram Promaster 2500. It was an empty shell of a van. And I got started on building, started with, all the basics, kill mats for sound deadening, insulation, running wire, putting in a subfloor, all the things that don't really make it look like anything. It took me a few months to get really done. I was still working a full-time in-person job at the time. And a little bit after buying the van, I switched into a job that's more remote. I'm a project manager for an employee listening company, and really got to be able to dive even deeper into that process as soon as I really got that new role. And I really did something quite simple. So you come in the door and you have a little walkway right here that I'm sitting in front of. I have a galley kitchen along this side, and then a built-in bed and a small bench that I'm sitting on. So very, very simple design. I wanted something that didn't require me to do a lot of moving of pieces to make the bed or to have a meal or use the bathroom. And to this day, I loved everything about this design. There is nothing I would really change. So a couple common questions people always ask about vans and what you do. How do you go to the bathroom? How do you eat? And how do you power your van? So let me talk about those. Right now I'm sitting on top of the one bench in my van, and I decided to do a very simple bathroom experience in the van. So I did not put in a shower, but I did want a toilet. So I bought a Nature's Head composting toilet. I'm about 6 feet tall, and so I wanted a toilet that was taller, and the Nature's Head composting toilet did that for me. It has a nice, really easy setup with a liquids bin and a solids bin, and an easy agitator, and even an exhaust pipe that sends the gross smelling air out right under my van, which is nice and easy. So my one bench here is where I go to the bathroom. It's where I work. It's where I eat. It's the one seat in the entire van, and so everything that you have to sit down to do happens right here. Then I also, people always want to know about food. So what I did for my food setup, I have a small Dometic fridge. I maybe will someday upgrade to a bigger fridge, but it's about 2.5 cubic feet. Has a small freezer insert, very small and easy. And it does hold, for me and my dog, food for about 3 to 4 days at a time, typically, depending on really how elaborate I'm planning on eating. My dog is on a partially fresh food diet, so she does actually have to have things in the fridge as well. But pretty great. But yeah, Dometic, I don't remember the exact number of it, but it's the 2.5 foot cubic fridge option. Last thing is power system. I went very simple, I guess I always say, when it comes to my power system. I decided to do only a DC power setup built into the van originally. So I have 200 watts of solar on the roof that feed down through a Renogy solar charge controller to feed into my 200 amp hours of battery power storage. If I have full solar, all my batteries are full, I can actually run for 4 days without taking in any additional energy, even if I had to run everything. So that's with the max usage of my system. I just yesterday, with the help of Jonnie, installed a Shore power plug with a run into 4 plugs. Not currently planning to use that to power and load my batteries, but if I ever was at a campground and wanted to meal prep or be able to plug a lot of things in, I now do have 4 AC power plugs in the van. Not sure how much I will use them for a little while because I'm very used to my small system. For the last year of travel, since I finished building kind of the 1.0 version of this van. I have been using a Jackery 1000 power system to be able to run my tea kettle, to be able to charge devices if I was needing to that don't charge off of 12-volt power. Really very simple AC needs. And so I work remotely as a project manager for an employee engagement company called Workforce Science Associates. And I have incredibly, really supportive people in my company who love that I do this. And so I've had to be very, very thoughtful about how I'm able to actually still do my job full time while on the road, which can sometimes be challenging. So I work about an 8-hour day typically. I usually start between 7 and 8 in the morning and then done between 4 and 5 in the afternoon. And I have to do everything I do on a computer. So right now the setup I have is I use a hotspot through Verizon on my phone plan. And I have a cell phone signal booster that has a magnetic outdoor antenna that I just hook up on the front of the van, and an indoor antenna that I run through and just set back here on the bed with my phone on top of it. And I've really never had any problem having good enough signal to be able to do Zoom calls, to be able to be online all day, and really to be able to do everything that I need to do, uploading massive data files and really being able to edit employee surveys. For that, sometimes I do have to think a little bit more about where I'm parking though. And so I love being able to just be out there in the middle of nowhere on public land, but that's not really very conducive to being able to work full time. So that's more of a weekend opportunity for me. During the week, I typically do a lot of parking at friends and family's houses or utilizing something like Harvest Hosts, which is actually how I met Jonnie and Midwest Fan Builders. I got into Harvest Host right away. My first actually ever night really camping in the van, I stayed at a Harvest Host in the middle of New Mexico. And I love it. I've loved it. Every single experience I've had, I've stayed at alpaca farms, lavender farms, wineries, breweries, distilleries, farms, van shops. I mean, you name it, I've probably camped there. And it's absolutely wonderful. I really love being able to meet people. And the great things there is they're very welcoming to me having a dog. And they're very awesome about having typically close enough to a city where I get good cell reception and or they have Wi-Fi opportunities for me. This is Maggie right here. She is almost 5 years old. She'll be 5 in just a few weeks. And I rescued her. She came from the streets of Oklahoma and got brought to Nebraska, where I currently live. About 3.5 years ago is when I got her. And I had to think about her a lot when I planned out the van build. So when I was originally thinking of van design, I didn't have a dog, and so I did have to make a few adjustments to my original idea. And I actually built right down here below my bed a dedicated space for Maggie. So she has her own little kennel space, her little house that has space for a nice big plushy bed, some toys, a blanket, and she loves it. She will hop in and out the open door all day long and take little naps while I'm working. I also had to think about food. So in the back of the van, in my garage, I have a kind of shelving unit made that had a specific spot for her little dog food vault, I think is what they call it, to be able to have enough food. And then I keep some food in here in the van so I'm not constantly having to go outside and get her meals all the time. I talked about in the fridge, she has a partially fresh food diet, so I do have to keep fresh dog food, cucumbers and pumpkin puree with me in the van at all times to really help her. Being a rescue dog, you have to think about nutrition a bit earlier in their time to make sure that they do make it to their golden years with you. And I also think about where I camp, so I always try to make sure I'm aware of any poisonous plants wherever I'm going to be going to, any animals that may cause problems, things that I might need to think about. I'm hoping to go spend some time in the desert at some point, and so getting her vaccinated for rattlesnake bites and things like that. I have an incredible vet that I work with in Nebraska who really just helps me think about what do I need to do to make sure she's going to be good on the road. But this little sweetie keeps me really happy while we're on the road. I have a whole setup in the front seat for her. I built a platform in the front seat with a nice little soft dog bed. And most dogs do love to look out the windows, but not my Maggie. She stares directly at me the entire time I am driving because she always wants to make sure that I am right there. And anyone who has camped with me will also know if she cannot see me, she will be whining as if I have abandoned her. And so you constantly hear her little whines or yelps trying to figure out where I am. But this is little Maggie May, or Margaret May is her official name. And if you ever want to follow along to our travels, our Instagram account is actually Vanasaur and Maggie. Most of the photos will be of the van and of Maggie. I every once in a while make an appearance in the pictures, but she is the true star of the show. Okay, so I am a very goal-driven person, and so when I was building the van, I decided to create some goals that I have for my travels in the van, and my time while being in the van. So my first big goal that I had for the van is I want to drive it to every state you can drive to. And I have little magnets on my fridge that kind of track what states have I accomplished. And to accomplish a state, I say you have to have slept there at least twice, because there are some very small states. And so I want to make sure I spend some good time in Rhode Island and Connecticut when I finally make it out to the East Coast. Surprisingly, it actually took me about 4 months of traveling in the van before I finally got to count off my home state of Nebraska, because I kept jutting off to the mountains or down south while I was starting. My second goal for the van is I want to drive to every national park that you can drive to. You notice I keep saying that you can drive to because obviously there are some we can't drive to. I'm hoping to go to Alaska next summer, and I have learned that out of the about 6 national parks that are in Alaska, only 3 have roads that go to them. And so I'm not going to be able to necessarily hit all of them while I'm in Alaska, but still hoping maybe I can get one that's not drivable. And then a little closer to home, I have the goal of camping in every state park in Nebraska. So not taking that national, that would be a lot, but trying to really explore my home state of Nebraska and really give it a little bit love. If you are a person who does like to hit small state parks in Nebraska, there is one called Toadstool Geologic Park, and I cannot recommend it more to people. And then a goal that kind of came about while I've been in the van is I'm hoping to, sometime in fall of 2024, start a podcast. It's going to be called Down by the River, and it's going to highlight the incredible everyday stories of the people I've met along my travels. Well, thanks so much everybody for watching along on my first ever van tour I've ever done. I've really enjoyed getting to show off what I've built and the love that I have for being able to travel in the Vanasaur with my amazing dog Maggie. Again, if you want to follow along at any point on the travels we do or see the van build process that I documented, my Instagram is Vanasaur and Maggie, all one word, all lowercase, and it's a public account, so feel free to follow along.